Today, we bring you a very special edition of the Rockstar Principals podcast. After weeks of campaigning, Dr. Todd Whitaker agreed to sit down with the Doctor of Proctors and the boss prior to his keynote speech at the Pennsylvania Association for Elementary and Secondary School Principals State Conference. Try putting that on a bumper sticker. Their interview covered a breadth of topics focused on principalship and effective leadership for educators. Now, in its entirety, we are humbly proud to present the renowned author, speaker, leader, and educator, Dr. Todd Whitaker. Rock on! Welcome to the Rockstar Principals podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
Welcome back to the Rockstar Principals podcast. We're very, very pleased and honored to have for our Church of Whitaker segment the man, Dr. Nick is already going to spook him away with his theme song. We're very, very thankful and fortunate. We're at the Pennsylvania Association of Elementary and Secondary School Principals Conference in State College, Pennsylvania. And Dr. Todd Whitaker is the keynote speaker for the session today. And we were able to connect with him on Twitter, direct message him on Twitter. And he was very nice and generous to give a little bit of time before his keynote presentation. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes. Nick maybe wants to just give a little bit of background for those that aren't familiar with Dr. Whitaker, and then we'll go right into a couple of questions.
Absolutely. If you're not following Dr. Whitaker on Twitter, at Todd Whitaker, that's his Twitter handle. It's an excellent Twitter feed, lots of excellent retweets that connect with many educators across the country. You can Google Dr. Todd Whitaker, a gentleman from Indiana, currently with the Indiana State University. He was a middle school principal. He was a middle school teacher. And in our pre-conversation was talking about how middle school is his true love, which John and I can definitely agree with and appreciate. He has 3 children, I believe 2 girls and 1 boy.
Yep.
And we were actually just talking about one of his daughters who's in a principal preparation program and is a teacher as well. So it's a family of educators, which is wonderful. And Dr. Whitaker, we wanted to open up talking about a theme that is near and dear to our hearts and what we're focusing on a lot with our podcast, and that is longevity for the middle school principal. We're looking at the challenges and the threats, and then we're looking at the motivators. Why would principals stay in the role? So from what you've seen in your travels across the country, in your studies, in your writing, in your experience, what are you seeing being the biggest challenges facing principals today in the role, in remaining in the role?
Okay. Well, before we start, I know that your listeners obviously have known what talented and intelligent people both of you gentlemen are, but they probably weren't aware of how exceptionally good-looking both of you are. So I thought I'd go ahead and just share that with the viewers and just get that out there right now, and so that then they can just picture that in their mind.
You're far too kind.
You picture
We're going
that in
to
their
have to
mind.
change our Google image search results, I think, to back that up.
Yeah.
It is all true.
Somebody might want to cut and paste Ryan Gosling as Photoshop, but anyhow, I thought I'd go ahead and get that out there. So
Appreciate that.
It's interesting. That's a great question and an important question, but one that I think that's why a person does do research, so they actually know why people leave. One of the things that's a challenge, and I think that we had visited a little bit beforehand about potentially how elementary tend to be stationary a little longer than middle school, than high school. I would think that there's a chance gender influence has some of that in there. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know, it's interesting, I'm in a principal preparation program, and many times you have outstanding female candidates, but they tend to be, in general, a little more place-bound. So what happens then is they're outstanding, but unless the district or the 3 surrounding districts, unless they can get on there, then potentially they won't get to pursue administration. Well, I would think, just off the top of my head, knowing nothing, which is why you do research, that could, especially if you think of a little more likely to be elementary, just percentage-wise, that could be one reason they tend to be a little more stable, maybe because of lack of options in moving.
Okay, that's a very good sense, the geographic
Possibly,
piece of
but
that.
again, until you do research, you don't know.
It's hard to find.
I think the other thing that makes it a little tough to generalize is sometimes you have people who are, I think it depends on what they're moving to. Or do you have someone who's just high-flying and outstanding, and then thus they want to go from here to central office or to higher education or to some other position? Or is it people who the district's willing to pay moving expenses if they'll just go anywhere? And so I think that you have the longevity, but then you also have reasons for longevity. I'll use a comparative. I work with the LA Unified School District, and one time they wanted me to come out and work with them on teacher retention. And they talked about a concern, and LA Unified is, of course, very large, yes. And they talked about a concern about turnover, and some of their schools had very high levels of teacher turnover, and I said, it is so tough to generalize, because my first question is going to be which teachers. If the best principal takes over, there's a chance they have teacher turnover because there's people who don't want to work that hard, who don't want to put in that much effort.
Absolutely.
Or the principal works to remediate them and they're not interested, whatever. Or you could have a principal that is a low flyer, very ineffective, very dysfunctional, and they have a lot of turnover because the best teachers are thinking, I want to be someplace where I can make a difference. And my ability to impact students is much more limited here with this leader. So I think a little bit's that same situation. If you think about it in a district, the principals least capable of leaving are the least effective principals.
Very true.
A superintendent who's very dysfunctional fights like crazy to stay in their job, even if the board hates them. And a really high-flying, effective superintendent, if they felt like they had a dysfunctional board, well, they're going to go somewhere, they're going to make a difference. So both of those situations are maybe the opposite of what you'd think, but I don't know what percentage of people fall into those categories, so that's a tough answer for me.
It's interesting, the research along the lines of what you just referenced right there. Currently, about 75% of the people who are looking to leave the principalship, who have indicated that, whether it's a local survey or a national survey, are leaving the profession entirely. There's only about 25% who are looking to move up to a central office position or move on to perhaps a college professorship.
Right.
You have a lot that right now are saying that within the next 5 years they see themselves, because of the standardized testing and the challenges in front of them, that would leave altogether, or perhaps go back to the classroom. Now,
right.
Again, that's speculative because they haven't done that
right,
yet.
Yes, right.
So we don't know what they're
right.
actually going to do. But.
Well, if you think of just offhanded comments, I mean, for literally 30 years, I've heard people say 1/3 of all superintendents will retire within the next 5 years. And I know some people are hoping to certain people that's true. But again, to do it versus saying it sometimes can be a challenge, because a lot of times the people who are most frustrated and most struggling potentially also have the least skills to pursue other jobs. A person who's a highly effective principal would be highly effective at anything. And they have many more options than the person who's ineffective in those roles, because typically it's universal skills that apply to anything. I'm not just talking about education. But that's why we have experts like you doing the research.
It's interesting you say that, and if I can dovetail with the 7-year question real quick. The research, and we talked about this before we started recording, is also showing that for a principal to reach their maximum level of effectiveness, it takes about 7 years. Jon and I have speculated multiple times that turnover of staff has a lot to do with that. The people who are not on board with your vision hopefully will leave. You're going to have retirements, and you replace with your own people. So maybe that 7-year time frame plays into that. But also, you've referenced the importance of the central office, the superintendent, to have the same district leadership and that vision to keep the effective principal there. So it sounds more systemic in the way you're kind of looking at that. Do you have any opinions on why you think the 7 might be that magic number, or what a principal can do in that time to build effectiveness?
No, but I'm always cautious of generalizations.
Sure.
Because one thing I know, the best principal in 1 year is going to have accomplished much more than an average principal in 7. There's no question whatsoever. So, think about even an example of the very best teacher who's 22 versus a solid, middle-of-the-road teacher with a 25-year veteran. That first day of school, that 25-year veteran is more efficient at taking attendance than that 22-year-old superstar teacher. But at the end of the second week, they're not. At the end of the second week, that very best teacher now has quiz bowls. They do all sorts of activities. There's things on the board. They're playing music when the kids come in. They've already passed them in an extremely short period of time. You know, the research that shows it, and again, sometimes research is actually somebody talking, thus we pretend it's research. And I always hope that's what people think about me. But anyhow, the thing that talks about how it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Gladwell.
But think about Gladwell in this. Have you ever had a student teacher who's already a superstar?
Yep.
And the reason is they have 10,000 hours in their mind. They have 10,000 hours of mental practice. Mm-hmm. Literally, when they had a little brother, when they were 4, they were thinking, how can I get this kid to do this? How can I get him to do this? How can I? Then they babysat, and they're thinking, I have 5 kids that are all wound up, but if I come in with activities prepared, I get them to play the games I want. But if I just sit there and say, what do you want to do? They all just start grabbing each other and wrestling on the ground. And what happens with less functional people, they never reach 10,000 hours because they don't even think about their job while they're on their job.
Correct. That's an excellent point. And there's a book called Talent is Overrated by Geoff Colvin, which actually takes the, and I just lost the name. It wasn't Gladwell, was it? Who did the 10,000 hours?
Yeah, Outliers.
Yeah. He expands on that and takes case-specific examples and looks at just what you said, the people who are saying they're reaching 10,000 hours, but when you really do the math and the effort that went into that, it doesn't even come close to that number.
But you know one thing I'm going to say, and of course there's always catchy titles, and I try to have it too, because that's the selling the book. I think talent is underrated, but too narrowly defined.
Okay.
In other words, when I think talent, I think, and I'm using my hands, and that goes very well on a audio podcast.
We do it all the time. Yeah.
But when I see talent as big picture, work ethic, dedication, caring, effort, intelligence, and so in my mind, talent isn't overrated. It's way underrated. It's just if talent is only defined as IQ score, or talent is only defined as something narrow, then that's an easier argument. But your superstars also work harder than everybody else, and they're smarter than everybody else, and they get along better than everybody else, and they have a bigger vision than everybody else, so in my mind, talent, I'm talking big picture talent versus a narrow focused talent, which could be then overrated.
So we're talking about superstars, and I'm finally ready to talk now. I've gotten over my, I've gotten used to myself.
John seemed very shy earlier, so now he's coming out of his shell.
Last night was like Christmas Eve for John. He couldn't sleep.
So Nick got to ask you, about, as we said to you, his passion and what he's been focusing on. The thing that really connected me with your work is from the earliest stuff that I read, what do your best people think? And you brought that all the way through to now Shifting the Monkey. It's a whole chapter in Shifting the Monkey, and constantly having your focus as a leader when you have to make a decision for folks that haven't read it. When you have to make a decision, thinking about how this will be received by my best people. And that's the way I've tried to be. I mean, that was something very early on I hooked on with as a leader. The challenge I've found with it is that at times gets misinterpreted as playing favorites. And my response has been, I'm comfortable with that. Am I wrong? Do I need to address that with people that accuse me of playing favorites? Is it okay to just say, here's why you might think I'm playing favorites?
Well, I think that there's about 8 questions in there.
Sorry. Yes,
no. But that's okay, because one of the things that I try to do is I try to break stuff down so that you have little screens to look through and be able to answer any of your own questions.
Sure.
Think about this. Somebody accusing you of playing favorites. Do you really think that in their heart that's what they're thinking? Or are they just thinking, I want you to be nicer to me. I want you to expect less of me. I want you to be. It's like, I'm in a principal preparation program. And we'll have somebody, I was 25 when I was a high school principal. And if somebody came up and said, don't you think you're too young to be principal? Do you know what I'd say? Nothing. I don't feel obligated to respond to that. With my own children, one of them goes, your head's fat. Did you know I've never said no, you're fat. I've never said that.
Right.
I've tended just to ignore it because typically people are using it as a weapon. And so the importance of ignoring is essential when it comes to things like that. But there's a difference between making every decision based on your best people and everyone knowing you're making every decision based on your best people. In other words, I've known principals who've said, because this all came from research originally, was where the whole concept came from. And I've known principals who are truly outstanding that said, I go and ask every teacher what they think, and I listen to 3 of them. Meaning that everybody feels involved, but they're really going to focus on that. One of the things, if you'll notice, I do a lot with seating, where people sit and all that stuff. I think room dynamics are essential. In fact, great principals have faculty meetings teachers look forward to and value. We've never found an exception. We've never found an average principal that had faculty meetings people look forward to and value. And we've never found a great principal that didn't. Seating's critical because everybody's there and everybody knows it. I will never sit next to my superstar, because when I do, I take away their power. And instead, I want to take away the crummy people's power. So I always sit next to the least effective person instead of the most effective person. Then people don't see it. That's one way, one slight way. There's lots of ways. They don't see it as favoritism because I'm not sitting by them. But most principals feel more comfortable not sitting by negative people, and then the negative people gather more power. When I send my best teacher to go and visit a school, I also typically, or go to do a conference, I typically try to choose 2 or 3 other people that are solid, will follow his or her lead, but yet are well enough received that they won't be seen as a favoritism. And when I recognize them, in other words, I'll say something like, the other day in my Friday Focus, I'll write something about the other day I was in a teacher's classroom and I saw the most wonderful activity, or one of my favorite quotes that's in one of my handouts in my Friday Focus is when the day after open house night. And I have an anonymous quote that says, your teachers are really nice. You're lucky. Overheard a mom talking to her daughter at open house night. Every teacher thinks that was them. I don't say, and by the way, that was Mrs. Smith they were talking about. Everyone go key her car in the parking lot this afternoon. But I might privately write Mrs. Smith a note saying that was about her, but use anonymous public praise in the eyes of the vision there, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, perfect sense.
And now a word from our fake sponsors. But we'd really love if they were our real sponsors. Seriously, we would love it.
It's yours?
No,
Your mother said she found it in your closet.
I don't know. One of the guys must have...
Must have what?
Look, Dad, it's
Where
not...
did you get it?
Dad,
Answer me. Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
Parents who use drugs have children who use drugs.
Oh, brother, I tell you, I've been having such a hard time getting up in the morning. I know the energy's not there. I'm getting old. The bones are creaking. The muscles are feeling tight.
Yeah,
I just don't know what to do anymore to get myself, just charge my batteries every day.
What, did you ever think about trying yoga?
Oh, come on, man. You got to be kidding me. Yoga, Nick. What kind of man does yoga?
I'll tell you what kind of man does yoga. Every kind of man does yoga. In fact, the man does yoga. That's DDP Yoga. Diamond Dallas Page, the master of the diamond cutter, has come up with a unique and revolutionary system of yoga that is dynamic, that gets the blood flowing. It's not static. This isn't your mom's yoga. This is big-time yoga. Now, DDP, this man, former WCW World Heavyweight Champion, he didn't become a pro wrestler until he was 35 years old. How did he keep his body fit? He's almost 60 years old now. How is he still a model of precision from a physical specimen? You've got to get DDP Yoga. John, you got to give it a shot. DDP Yoga. Feel the bang!
But I also use my Friday Focus. I never keep track. I never use tally sheets because I'm very comfortable with an ineffective teacher coming up and saying, how come my name's never in the Friday Focus? And I say, I recognize people whenever I see good things taking place in their classrooms or in our school. And that's because it's the truth. And I don't want them to ever be confused as to now it's your turn. Think about this with turns. I'm getting ready to write. I want to write something called how to get all teachers to be like your best teachers, because in my mind, that's the key to everything.
Absolutely.
You know, the reason any change in education, if it doesn't either help you get better teachers or improve the teachers we have, is a complete waste of time. So I want to get all, because in the most dysfunctional school in the world, the best teacher is still way better than the worst teacher.
Yes.
So in the most dysfunctional school, if we could figure out a way to get all of the teachers to be like the best teacher, that's a way to improve every school, inner city, rural, wealthy, poor, suburban, urban, any country. Then all of a sudden poverty is irrelevant. And I really think you can do that. I think you can, that's what I think you have to try to move to when you're hiring or when you're working with or when you're improving. And so kind of with that in mind, I think that you want to, with that superstar, really work hard for them to never feel isolated or lonely. But privately, you're constantly... Georgia Humphreys is the best teacher I ever worked with in my life. And I'm hoping none of the other teachers I work with are listening.
I've heard you say that before, though.
But it's true.
Use that name.
Georgia Humphreys knew she was the best teacher I ever worked with in my life because I told her all the time. But I never gave her a plaque at a faculty meeting because I had about 30 other teachers that thought they were the best teacher I ever worked with in my life. And think about the work ethic they want to have to be able to be up at that level. So I think it's a fine, skilled line. Yeah. In a great teacher's classroom, every student thinks they're the favorite. And I think that what do? But that great teacher has favorites. They just somehow don't quite. But what happens is this, and I take this in mind, the person who came up and said that, or when people say it, typically people are resentful of you valuing someone else because they don't feel valued themselves. But if you feel valued yourself, you don't resent other people being valued. So I think one of the balances is making sure everyone feels stroked, especially everyone worthwhile feels stroked. And then as much as possible, never allow that superstar person to feel isolated. Have it be 3 people who go and do this. Have it be 2 people. And some of them are very much credible mainstream faculty members, but are good.
Right.
But they'll follow the lead of that superstar.
And it's so frustrating. It's one of those things that for me, I have to come to terms with that not everyone thinks that way, because even if you look at a district level, when you're as a principal working beside people that may be ineffective,
right,
other principals, and that's not the case now for any of our colleagues that are listening now. All of our colleagues in Downingtown are outstanding. But
one of whom's getting the
she's getting the NDP award tonight. Right, Dr. Wirt. But when you're again working hard like that, and you see every month at the school board report, the superintendent's report, who's getting the pat on the back this month,
right,
and they get their turn just like you get your turn.
Right.
And as great as you felt when you had your time in the spotlight and you had your turn in front of the board, and now you see,
right,
they're getting it too. It's hard to feel resentment toward that. You feel guilty because you want to appreciate that praise, but it hurts it.
But some of it is because that's potentially, maybe in some places, the only praise that occurs is a public recognition. Yeah. Versus a private acknowledgement that regularly I walk through your school and I go, I don't know how you do it. I do not know how you do it.
Much more.
Your kids are, and so what happens is, you've heard me say before, Teacher of the Year doesn't even mean Teacher of the Year. At best, it means Teacher of the Year who hasn't won Teacher of the Year yet. And so many of our acknowledges and things are rotations. Think about this. If you want all your teachers to become like your best teachers, can I tell you something? You better never put a student teacher with an average teacher.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But think about what percentage of principals, and I promise it's small. We got Dr. Nick over here, I promise it's small. Nick, keep in mind your second dissertation's easier to do than your first one, by the way, too. But anyhow, think about this. What percentage of principals have the strength of character to tell a middle-of-the-road veteran teacher, I cannot give you a student teacher because you sit behind your desk too much, you use too many worksheets, you yell at the kids, because whatever it is they do, and I'm choosing random things out of there, but until those are corrected, you cannot have a student teacher. Or even a mentor. How many mentors are done because they're on the same team, they're on the same grade level, or you're the other 7th grade, I'm choosing middle school, you're the other 7th grade social studies teacher. I'd never, ever, ever one time give mentors on that basis. But average principals do it all the time.
Absolutely.
Right. And if you don't have the ability to tell a person no about a student teacher, you tell me you're going to have the ability to remediate that person. You're already afraid of them.
Yeah, right.
So do you believe, and let's take that strategy you just gave with the mentors, and that, because that's important, and that's something that I think you would qualify as being important. How do principals decide which are the hills to die on, which are the battles worth fighting, and which are the things that, because you have so much to do, you just assign the mentors real quick?
I think you keep in mind the two ways you have to improve your school: hire better teachers and improve the ones you got. Many things we do have very little impact on those things. Think about hiring. One of the challenges is so often we settle. And we settle because it's the hardest time of year. We're whipped and we're worn out. And it's something where you'd like to get the year done. You'd like to get things done. But I always say, would you rather put time and energy into hiring or remediating? Would you rather put time and energy into selecting, recruiting, and getting the very best person, or building a person once they're hired? And I would much rather hire somebody exceptional, because the other thing they do is they give you juice and energy.
Yeah.
And you have people that suck the energy out of you and people that add the energy. The one goal when you hire a new teacher is to have your school become more like the new teacher, not to have the new teacher become like the school.
Excellent.
And so things like that, because lots and lots of things, honestly, do not matter. You can feel free to edit this. Most state reports don't matter. Most district reports don't matter. They don't make any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, they just completely changed the game in Pennsylvania. For years, we had been, you make AYP or you don't make AYP. You're on the nice list or the naughty list, right? Now it's you get a number.
Right.
So we go from 1 year to here's what you're shooting for.
Right.
And now it's, no.
Right.
Here's what you're shooting for. You're
Right.
getting a number. From 0 to 100, you're getting a number based on all of these different things.
I recently wrote an article said that when we finally get there, will we ever be happy we arrived? Because my biggest fear is when we're focusing on things like that is we're putting all of our time and energy into something that even when we get it, we actually have nothing.
Yeah.
And that's a real concern. But the principals have to be the filter to not go down a path.
Right.
You have to go down a hollow path because you have to play the game to some degree. But if you build everything on the current test, you better hope the test doesn't change, because now you have nothing.
Sure.
That's very, Mike Schmoker shares a very similar belief. He writes for ASCD, and it's like there's about 3 things that really matter, and you key everything towards that, and that's where you're going to get your most leverage.
And we've had conversations. I mean, I know the last couple of years we've really worked a lot on data in our school district and using performance data, and I always felt like that was a strength for me. I was very comfortable with doing that, and my teachers tease me all the time about how I take the data and I wrap it up really nice and tuck it away every night and sing it a bedtime story and everything, because I've been so focused on that. And
Would you mind singing a bedtime story for all of us right
absolutely.
now? Absolutely.
I'm more than if we had time.
Okay.
But what I found this summer, I just had this moment where I was like, God, we got to get back to just doing fun stuff.
Right.
We have to just get back to finding time to make connections. We have to get back. So I've made a point this year of pushing forward just ideas, and people are going, why are we doing that? And I said, because the kids think it's fun. Right. It's something completely different. I just feel like as principals, all that stuff is really, really important. And we need to keep our eye on that, obviously.
Right.
But I think we, as with a lot of things, you just get the momentum carries you so forward onto that sometimes you forget that other stuff.
Right.
Why you became a principal. I didn't become a principal to work with data. I didn't become a principal to deal with all of that stuff. I became a principal to work with kids and to make a difference with kids, as hokey as that sounds.
I just came from the airport, and I do not want to fly on a plane where a pilot learned to fly using worksheets. That's very important in terms of that.
Yeah. You never. That's one of those things. No kid ever said, "Boy, I wish that I can't wait for that next worksheet."
Right.
I can't wait till we get more worksheets from that teacher. You never hear kids saying that when they're walking out.
And the very best people have the ability to always keep that in mind. But it's critical for the role of the principal to stroke, value, and acknowledge that, or else the very best people will start to think they're wrong.
Sure.
Well, we've taken up a lot of your time, and you have get ready for your presentation, so we appreciate the time you spent with us. But we do have the famous Rockstar Principals.
We're each going to ask one. We like to close with just non-educational questions, if you're
Perfect.
comfortable with
Have
that.
At
trust us. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Nick.
Does it take intelligence or skill?
Neither.
Yeah, no, just more opinion than anything.
Fire away then.
Do I get the superhero question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. If you could choose a superhero that you could have their powers or you could just be that superhero, who would you choose and why?
And you can't pick either of us.
Oh man, I had a coin out. I guess I'll put it away. You know, this is going to sound really weird, and you'll probably want to edit this out.
I can't wait to hear this.
It's like when you know the reason I don't buy Powerball tickets?
What would that be? Why not?
I don't want to win it. I like my life. I don't want to now have $280 million that I have to worry about something happening, you know. Now, I wouldn't mind winning $50,000 or $100,000, something that's nice but doesn't change your life. But I like my life the way it is. I'm very lucky. I feel extremely fortunate. And so, I love superheroes. I love comic books, always have, but there's nothing about any one of them that jumps out as something that I feel like I'd like because I like my life. I think, you know, maybe we should have a comic book about teachers and principals, because think about the superheroes and the difference they make every day and how their real goal is to save and assist and benefit others. So I'm not avoiding your question, but that really would be it. There's no power I'm wishing for.
Okay. I have a feeling he'll be more passionate about my answer. You're a big Cardinals fan.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Born and raised just outside of Philadelphia myself. And you feel like your 2011 World Series championship tainted at all because you won them because of a squirrel? Did that taint the championship for you at all? That you were? And
by squirrel, you don't mean Lenny Dykstra, right?
No. I'm talking about the squirrel that ran across home plate.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, sure.
My oldest daughter is a second-year teacher, and she is named after Whitey Herzog.
Wow.
So if you have a dog named after,
if you have a
dog named Dykstra, I don't even care. It doesn't even count. St. Louis people who have a cat named Ozzy means nothing to me. Her middle name's Darrell. And Whitey Herzog's real first name is Darrell.
Get out of here.
And he's the first person we ever told my wife was pregnant. Okay?
Wow.
So anyhow, in 2011, they had my daughter had never met him. I'd met him once when he was signing autographs at a car dealer, and we were going in to tell my parents that my wife was pregnant. And he was signing autographs, and we asked him if it was okay if we name our kid Darrell.
Wow.
And he said, that'll make two of us. They had an auction in 2011, true story. They had an auction to help Joplin, Missouri, when they had the terrible tornado. Yeah. And Whitey Herzog had played in Joplin in one of his minor league teams. Okay. And you got to spend the day with Whitey Herzog. And it was on Fox Sports Midwest, and I was the high bidder. And I did it completely so my daughter could meet him. He could not have been nicer. He could have not have been more gracious. He is a genius. He knows every player's salaries in the major leagues now, because he knows how much that affects baseball and trades and what you're doing. Yeah. Anyhow, this was during the summer. The Cardinals were struggling. It was in July. Whitey goes, Todd, we've got to finish in the wild card position because we've got to play Philadelphia because we're the only team that can beat them. We've got to play them in a 5-game series because we can't beat them in a 7-game series, but we can beat them in a 5-game series. And if we beat them in a 5-game series, we're going to win the World Championship.
Wow. And we helped you get in.
And we appreciate it.
Because we knocked Atlanta out. I just remember how happy I was knocking Atlanta out of the playoffs. And then, we got to be careful what we wish for. We wound up getting the Cardinals in the first round, and they took us out.
And isn't that funny? And he said, we're the only team that can beat Philadelphia.
At that time.
And he goes, but we can't beat them in a 7-game series.
Wow. And it wound up.
And that was July when we were struggling, and we weren't even in the
play. Just made in, the second to last day of the season. I think they got in, and then they rode that all the way. Yeah, and Philadelphia Phillies haven't been the same since. Unfortunately, we've fallen by the wayside. And the Cardinals, you must be excited. They're up 2-1, right, as we speak. And that was the right call last night. I'm impartial.
Last night,
that call at third base was the right call. Unfortunately for the Red Sox,
I'm still very nervous, but yes, we'll just have to see what happens. But I'm a big fan. But I'm not a fair weather guy.
Sure.
But we've had an unbelievable run in playoffs, and of course the expanded playoffs make your run a little easier to continue.
It's been good for the sport. Yeah.
It's been extremely exciting. I've gone to 2 of the playoff games, and so we'll just see.
Well, we'll root for the Cardinals for you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Dr. Whitaker, we cannot thank you enough so much. This really means a lot to us, and everything that you shared. And we're looking forward to your keynote today. I'm sure it'll be outstanding. I
am honored. I feel very flattered. And by the way, in the keynote, the jokes won't be any funnier the second time. So heard me keep that in mind. But
we'll still laugh.
Thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And for listeners, these guys are brilliant people. If you get a chance to come to their schools, you ought to do it. Just have a chance to pick their brains. They're extremely bright and talented educational leaders, and so I feel very honored to have had a chance to spend a few minutes visiting with them.
Here's the money I promised you for saying that.
That might cost us extra.
I think the microphone's still on.
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.